Are you moving to the head of the class of the Heisman with those two games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those two games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. What is he, a sixth-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish, back with you. Great to be back with you here on the show on this Thursday. We got Thursday night football ahead of us in the NFL and some college games as well. We'll give you a preview of those. Also, Melissa Kim will preview tonight's game, as we mentioned, between the Ravens and, of course, it should be a tight game with the Cincinnati Bengals. They always play really close games, so stay on the grid for that. In addition, of course, we have everything covered for you in the world of sports. Sporting news contributors, as always, here on the show, and we break it all down for you. And naturally, yesterday was the results of a lot of the elections going on across the country. I'm sure you are aware of that, but maybe you weren't aware of some of these sports betting laws that are now going into effect, and another potential one that we could be headed for. So we wanted to start off the show with that. We'll begin not with Missouri. We know Missouri has now legalized sports betting, and on December 1st, it looks like it will launch. Now let's get to the latest in Colorado, where taxes have been a big subject of debate in Colorado as to whether or not the state is going to be able to levy higher taxes on their constituents, people who were betting on sports and the sports books. Well, the answer is a resounding yes. More than 75% of the votes in Colorado approved a new bill. Proposition JJ will allow the Rocky Mountain state to retain more than the previous limit of $29 million in Colorado sports tax revenue. So had that not passed, the government would need to return any excess tax revenue to sports books and their casinos. But with this new amendment, they can now charge more than the $29 million that was there, very similar to what we see all across the country with sports betting on the rise in New York, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, and the sports rate changing in terms of what you could charge for tax. We're now going to see the same thing in Colorado, which is good news for their state and really doesn't change anything unless the sports books decide to charge more juice, which hopefully they don't as a result of this. Now, another story that seems to be percolating on the legalization of sports betting also came out late yesterday and today is the state of Minnesota getting ready to legalize sports betting. It certainly seems more possible than ever before. They're one of the remaining 10 or so states that don't have it. Well, the Running Aces Casino, one of the Indian tribe casinos, released a statement yesterday that they are in favor of legalizing sports betting in Minnesota. So naturally, there's a lot of different things that could happen with this. It could run directly through the tribes. It could run throughout the state. But stay tuned to this one because there certainly seems to be a chance that in the next 6 months, maybe even before the Super Bowl, we could hear about yet another state legalizing sports betting, which is really good news for everyone across the country that they don't have to go offshore. All right, let's get to tonight's Thursday night football game. The Ravens tonight have already ruled out one of their tight ends. That's Isaiah Likely. He's out of the game tonight. Doubtful he was going in. The Bengals, by the way, are 6.5-point underdogs. T. Higgins not going to play in this one as well for Cincinnati, 8 o'clock Eastern start. How about a little piece of news from the National Football League that was unexpected? Chuba Hubbard, a running back in the NFL, gets guaranteed money. Wow, 4 years, $33.2 million. Congrats to Chuba Hubbard. Panthers obviously see him more part of the future. Hubbard, as you may recall, replaced Christian McCaffrey in the starting lineup when he was traded a couple of years ago. Also, they're going to start Bryce Young this week at quarterback. That's not a surprise as well. The Dallas Cowboys certainly are going to have to make a decision on Dak Prescott over the next couple of days. They have yet to place him on injured reserve, but it looks like he's going to be out potentially for the rest of the season with a hamstring pulled off his bone. Yikes, that does not sound good. Dak Prescott not going to play anytime soon. Cooper Rush looks like he's going to start indefinitely for the Cowboys. And also the Saints' Chris Olave, ahead of their game this week, is going to see some specialists about his concussions. He suffered concussions in 2 of the last 3 weeks. All right, results in college football last night. Ohio covers 19.5-point spread. It was not a close game. They beat Kent State 41-0. Northern Illinois beats Western Michigan 42-28. Now in tonight's action, Appalachian State, they're 1.5-point favorites against Coastal Carolina. Florida Atlantic are on the road underdogs at East Carolina. And how about this? SMU's had a great college football season. Right on the outside looking in of the college football playoff, they get a big commitment. Matt Leinert's son, Cole Leinart, is going to be headed to play for the Mustangs coming up next season. In the NBA last night, in the Western Conference, not many people thought the Golden State Warriors would be the hottest team to start the season, but folks, they have been it. The Warriors beat the Celtics last night, 118-112. They were 7-point underdogs on the road in Boston. Steph Curry had 27 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. Boston now 7-2. Golden State with a better record than them at 7-1. Steve Kerr, after the game, discussed how it has been the little minutes from the role players that has been big, and also Jason Tatum certainly disappointed. For the first time all season, it looked like the Celtics were handled.
I mean, in theory, we should be able to, if we're playing a bunch of guys 15 to 22 minutes, they should be able to go all out during those minutes. And I think we're getting that. Now, tonight was probably the first game we had 3 guys over 30 minutes. So the game kind of settled into a more traditional NBA game down the stretch. We had Wiggs, Draymond, and Steph out there all playing big minutes. But I thought Gary and Buddy just kind of tag teaming offense, defense, and then Loon, he's made so many big plays for us over the years. I thought his minutes were just massive down the stretch.
Yeah, I think they just did a good job of being more physical, and obviously they were, blitzing all of the ball screens. I came off, and we weren't, or I could speak for myself, a little rushed in the first half, and I think in the second half just accepted it and played with more patience and made the right read more often than not.
Boston falls to 7-2 on the season. You know who would take that record? It's the Philadelphia 76ers, folks. They're 1-6 to start the season. They lost to the Clippers last night, 110-98. Joel Embiid still out for a couple of more games. How about the best team in the NBA this season? It's the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're now 9-0. They beat the Pelicans 131-122, one of the more high-scoring games we saw this week. Also, LeBron James, ageless wonder. How about last night? 39 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, but the Grizzlies did beat the Lakers 131-114. AD Anthony Davis did not play in this game. All right, first week of college basketball coming close to a close. UConn last night beat Sacred Heart 92-56. Alex Karaban, 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists. Gotta say, unusual to see the new coach on the sidelines for the Arkansas Razorbacks, John Calipari, wins his first game as the head coach at Arkansas. Final score 76-60. They actually beat a pretty good team, Lipscomb University, known for throwing up a lot of threes and running all over the place. Calipari, after the game, talked about overcoming that challenge.
That is a very, very hard game to play out of the gate because you got to be disciplined and you better be in shape because they're going to run you for 25 seconds, and then we play fast and pressure. So we had guys exhausted with 3 minutes into the game. I come back to defensively, we did some good things, but we had to create a gap by creating turnovers. Well, against good teams, you're not going to just go create a turnover. You can't. How about this thought? Make a three. How about that thought? You make 7 or 8 today, you get 3 or 4 more today. I want you to think of the score. And we had 19 threes. I'm glad we didn't shoot more because we'd have missed more. But the good news is we threw the ball inside today and we did some good stuff. So we know we can do it.
Weird seeing the Razorbacks logo behind Calipari. I got to be honest. Creighton last night beat Texas Rio Grande. That's not the story. The story is Ryan Kalkbrenner had 49 points on 20 for 22 shooting. Creighton beats UT Rio Grande 99-86. I'm guessing they did not cover that spread. Auburn also beat Vermont 94-43. They did cover that spread. All right, in baseball news, the general manager meeting's wrapping up in San Antonio this week. Couple of news and notes out of there. We'll give them to you. An extension for Mike Schilt. He'll be the manager of the Padres through 2027. Mookie Betts likely to play second base or shortstop. Brandon Gomes, their general manager, told the media yesterday. And Wilson Contreras is going from catcher to first base. Breaking down the NFL with Matt Lutovsky next.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class at the Heisman with those 2 games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those 2 games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. You know, I mean, what is he, a 6th-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got to the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. A little bit of breaking news before we get to Matt Lutovsky. Scott Strickland, he's the athletic director at the University of Florida, makes the announcement that head coach Billy Napier will return to coach the Gators next season. Bit of a surprise, I think, for some people, but certainly news for Gator fans and, of course, college football fans as well. Florida down to their 3rd-string quarterback, by the way, against Texas this week. All right, let's bring in Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. We'll dive into the very latest. And, Matt, once again, thanks for coming on the show. Big story for the San Francisco 49ers and probably a bigger story for fantasy football. Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
He's going to play. I think he's going to play this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The line certainly indicates that. 49ers, 5.5-point road favorites this week, total of 50.5. So San Francisco, all the injuries seem to be, for the most part, outside of Ayuk, on the back burner. And what we're learning about Tampa Bay, Matt, a little bit is that regardless who they have on offense, they're going to score some points. Regardless who they have on defense, they're going to give up some points.
Yeah, that seems to be where we're at. They're a very scrappy team, for lack of a better word. Baker Mayfield's playing great this year. Certainly doesn't go down without a fight. I think this is going to be a good game, but I also think that people are looking at the 49ers as, all right, they had some injuries, they had some struggles in the first half, but now they're getting healthier. Like you said, they had their bye, and we're just going to see them be the team we all thought they were going to be over the second half of the season. I'm not quite so sure that's going to happen yet. There are things to look at in this game, mainly thinking, well, Tampa won't score. A lot of people thought that last week. They did just fine. So I expect another competitive game. I think there are going to be some points put up. We don't quite know how much McCaffrey's going to play, exactly what his role is going to be. But nonetheless, we know the 49ers are going to be able to run the ball. They should be able to throw the ball. And I think it's going to be a good game. I think the 49ers will win, but I do think it'll be fairly close. I could definitely see Tampa covering that spread and it being another one of those competitive games where people can't figure out how they were in it until the very end.
Yeah, I particularly looking forward to McCaffrey coming back as in fantasy, having this guy for 3 months do nothing, but that's just me. All right, so look, nobody playing better probably, I would say, outside of the Chiefs than the Buffalo Bills, man. I think that's fair to say. I know it was a close game last week against the Dolphins, but there were some shady calls, I thought, that this game could have got out of hand really early. But the line is basically telling us, like, hold the phone here, 3.5-point favorites on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. I know the public probably going to pound Buffalo here with a total of 47.5, but do you think that's the right side here, or does the line seem off?
Yeah, the line seems suspiciously low, and that always worries me. That always makes me take a second look, because Indianapolis looked horrible last week, just horrible. Joe Flacco looked like he couldn't do anything. They couldn't get on the same page with his receivers, and the running game was okay, but not great. I think that's the worry here, though, is Indianapolis being at home, getting the running game going against a team that, if there's one area to attack on their defense, it's running backs, whether on the ground or through the air. So that's a recipe for keeping a game close, with Buffalo winning ugly, but in a close game. I personally, I just think Indianapolis is reeling right now. I don't think they have a lot of places to turn. The defense has issues. The passing game has issues. But you're right. This is one of those lines that make you do a second look and really reevaluate it. It's very tempting, and we know how that turns out sometimes. But I do think Buffalo is just playing too good a football, and they're clearly the better team. And they're going into a situation where they don't have to worry about the elements, which you think would help them. So a very interesting game for sure.
Yeah, I think the reason why the Colts are only 3.5-point dogs is because they're one of the best teams in the NFL against the spread this season. I mean, imagine if they would have covered last week, which, by the way, they probably could have. 7-2 ATS this season. That's second best in the NFL behind Washington and Detroit. So certainly people are making money betting on the Colts all year. All right, now let's try to identify who the Denver Broncos are, Matt. We know exactly who the Chiefs are, so let's review. Broncos, a couple of weeks ago, 11-point road favorites at Carolina. They crush them. Broncos this past week, huge underdogs, 8-10-point underdogs against the Baltimore Ravens. They get crushed. Okay, so here we go again. Broncos, 8.5-point underdogs. I can't figure them out at all. They play the Chiefs this week. I know the Chiefs are playing below their skis this season. Every game seems to be close, right down to the wire, and I'm hearing so many people backing Denver. Is that the right side this week after what we saw with Denver last week at Baltimore?
No, I think Denver is one of these teams that is trouble for mediocre teams. If they're playing good teams at home, I think they can make life difficult. I just don't know if I can trust them on the road at this point. I don't know what Bo Nix has against elite defenses. Kansas City is an elite defense. They had their, share of struggles last week, but I still think that type of unit with Steve Spagnuolo leading the way. He'll be able to really cook something up against a rookie quarterback. And it does feel like it's only a matter of time before Kansas City has that big offensive game that makes everyone say, okay, they're looking good. They're getting ready for that second half push. Maybe they don't quite have the personnel, but I tell you what, DeAndre Hopkins looked great with Patrick Mahomes last week. Travis Kelce looks like he's getting back into it, and they're running the ball effectively. And I just think this is going to be the game. Denver is very solid defense, though. And, anytime you have a solid defense that can keep Kansas City down a little bit, let the offense hang around, and that's how you get a cover or backdoor cover possibly. But I like Kansas City here. I think they're breaking out. They're having their second half breakout too, just in time.
Yeah, they're 8-1 by the way to go undefeated. So they're not going to go undefeated. I can tell you that right now, Matt, because it doesn't happen. So here is the schedule. And all we really need to do here is ignore the Broncos, the Panthers, the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Browns, and circle that game. Wow, that's the game of the year in the NFL, right? Chargers at Bills on the 17th.
Yeah, well, that's just it. We it's easy to say, well, they're not going to go undefeated. Then you look at the schedule and say, well, maybe they will. They have some, other tough-ish games. But, yeah, I think that Bills game is the big one. We know the Bills have a pretty good history of beating them in the regular season. Not quite the playoffs, but the regular season, and they get that game at home. It's going to be an insane game. It's going to be a really fun game. So I wouldn't bet on them to go undefeated either. There's too many things that can go wrong, but they got a chance. They really do.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about this every year. It never happens in the NFL. New England got the closest. Miami did it in 72. Thanks again, Matt, for coming on.
Thank you.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class of the Heisman with those two games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those two games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. What is he, a sixth-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got into the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from three.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Now it's time to preview a couple of games in the NFL this weekend. We got the Bengals and Ravens, also the New Orleans Saints with a new head coach this week. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, for those of you who are sports bettors out there, a high percentage of games are won and covered by the NFL team that fires their head coach that next week or that same week. That's the story this week in the NFL. Keep a close eye. You know I never say this kind of stuff here on the show, but the New Orleans Saints getting 3.5 points with Darren Rizzi as is he interim head coach of the New Orleans Saints? Got to be one that I'll be looking at. I'll actually ask Brady Kannon about that coming up. But meanwhile, Darren Rizzi takes over as Dennis Allen gets fired, and you talk about a guy that has to get together very quickly. It is him. It is a big week when it's Falcons week in the Dome this week, and Rizzi basically says that it has been a whirlwind just to prepare for the upcoming game this week.
Yeah, it's been one of those 2 days, seems like 2 weeks a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you. Just a lot going on. I mean, obviously when you have a change in position, right, there's things that you got to change in your daily schedule. Listen, coaches are routine guys now, I'm guilty. Guilty as charged in being a routine guy. And so my personal routine's had to change up. And so you're just trying to figure out the best way to do things. I thought it was really important to try to communicate with just about everybody in the building, most importantly the players, and then obviously the coaches and the staff, and just making sure everybody's on the same page. We made some changes on the daily schedule. We made some changes on the practice schedule. And so, you just got to make sure that we've been doing things around here the same way, or at least similar, for a long time. And I thought it was important to maybe just get a little change of pace. And so we have a lot of people in the building that have been here for a while and have been doing that. And so just been doing a lot of that, a lot of schedule stuff, obviously dealing with our personnel. And then at the end of the day, we got a game plan. So just trying to make sure that we have enough time for all that. So, but listen, I'm like I said the other day, certainly up for the challenge, and we'll be there Sunday.
Saints have lost 7 straight games going into this week's game against the Atlanta Falcons. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Eagles are playing their best football of the season, thanks in part to Saquon Barkley, who's making insane highlights on the football field, but also racking up the amount of touches, getting close to a potential pace for 377 touches on the season. I mean, that goes back to the day when running backs used to get almost 400 over the course of the year. Nick Sirianni, the head coach of the Eagles, definitely keeping an eye on the workload for Saquon Barkley moving forward.
Again, you try to take care of them. You try to do what you need to do to win each and every football game. You try to take care of them throughout the week. I think that, the 2 games, obviously not last game, but the game before that and the game before that, we were able to get him out in the fourth quarter. You try to monitor as much as you possibly can, and that's really our jobs: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and being aware of it, on Sunday. But always considering that with each and every one of our players that we feel with load management, and I think our strength and conditioning staff and our trainers and our doctors give me really good insight to how to do that, and give our staff really good insight on how to do that. So. Always on our mind, with how many touches he has.
And I think right now that's the key for the Eagles, keeping him healthy for the playoffs. Meanwhile, are the Bengals and Ravens headed to the playoffs? Let's get a preview of tonight's game with Kevin Walsh.
Thursday night in Baltimore, a battle in the AFC North where Cincinnati goes to Baltimore trying to pull off an upset. Typically here, we'll take a look at some props, people that could break out. Jamar Chase certainly fits that description. He should be in the end zone. We've continuously seen the Ravens struggle against number 1 wide receivers. But push the props aside. What happens if Cincinnati pulls off this upset? The line is under a touchdown. We saw them already play Baltimore this season, and I kind of still think they should have won that football game. Well, if Cincinnati can make it happen here in the rematch, then they are absolutely live in the North. They're currently 10-1 to win the division. A win would put them just 1 game back of the Baltimore Ravens, and they'll have split the season series. I know Pittsburgh still looms, but look at their schedule the rest of the way. It is absolutely nightmarish. It is do or die for the Cincinnati Bengals in the division. We'll see if they do. Craig, it's back to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Coming up next, Melissa Kim will share her insights on the big game tonight, Ravens and Bengals. More coming up next.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class at a Heisman with those two games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those two games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. What is he, a sixth-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got into the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from three.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Always great to have Melissa Kim on the show, of course, from Bleacher Report, the digital host, and also on 105.7 The Fan, getting ready for tonight's game. And Melissa, like you and like the Ravens, not a lot of time off in between last week's game. I guess the good news for the Ravens is it was non-competitive in the second half of their game last week against the Denver Broncos, but I know that they're not going to feel great about that regardless, because no matter what, we know when they play the Bengals, anything goes.
When they play a divisional game, anything goes, right? We saw that in the loss to the Browns just a couple of weeks ago, because these two teams, all four of these teams in the division, they know each other very, very well, and who's playing who's Achilles heel and all that too. So yeah, these division games, they know what it means. They mean just a little bit more, obviously, when it comes to the playoff, because that's already a conversation around here, right? What are the playoffs going to look like for the AFC North, as well as the Ravens themselves? So yeah, I mean, last game against Cincinnati, it came down to the wire, had to play in overtime with the whopping number of points for both of these teams. So I really think that this one is going to come down to how the defenses play, right? Whose defense is going to be able to show up in a short week, especially in a primetime game in Baltimore under the lights. It's going to be a big one.
Yeah, 52.5 is the total tonight on FanDuel. So they're expecting a lot of points scored between these two teams. And, that's been the case all season long. I mean, Baltimore usually shows up on offense. Bengals usually show up on offense, but not on defense. And that's been their season this year. That's why. By the way, Lamar Jackson's been great. Right now, 61% completion percentage. He's been fantastic with 20 total touchdowns. We probably could say the same thing with the exception of one play for Joe Burrow against the Raiders last week. Just like a crazy pass he threw to the Raiders. The guy ran it all the way back for the touchdown. Beyond that, he's been great too. Head-to-head matchup, the Ravens lead 6-4. So they say that it's not a quarterback league, and it's not just the quarterbacks. I got to tell you, Melissa, I don't agree. I think that that's the focus tonight.
No, in this game, absolutely. And the thing with Joe Burrow is that because their record, he hasn't gotten as much attention, right? But he's having a phenomenal season, as you saw those numbers. I mean, just absurd, right? He's been throwing the ball probably the best since he's been in the league, right? I would argue for that. But quarterbacks heavy, yes, for sure. But then this offense, it's very strange to be saying, having covered this team for years, to say that the Baltimore offense is the highlight of this team, right? This is a franchise historically based in the defense when you think back to the days of Terrell Suggs and Ed Reed and Ray Lewis. So to say that you've got Lamar Jackson throwing to a number of weapons that, they're just endless, right? This offense has described itself as a pick your poison offense. Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver, mentioned that a couple weeks ago, and the offense has kind of embraced that and been calling that because you look at, obviously, the guys he throws to. Zay Flowers coming off of a game last week where he caught for more than 100 yards. Mark Andrews is back. He is indeed back. And then you have guys who are a little bit more reliable, obviously, have been in the past, like Nelson Aguilar. And then you have guys like Isaiah Likely, who will not play, by the way, tonight. But then you have other guys emerging as well. Charlie Kohler, the third-year tight end, who hasn't gotten a whole lot of looks, but he's certainly someone that they keep on the field a lot because he's such a big body, can block. And I haven't even gotten to the ground game, right, as we look at Derrick Henry here, where he had scored his career 100th touchdown last week against the Broncos. And then on top of that, he scored a touchdown in every single game that he's played in a Ravens uniform. So his numbers are just absurd there. And I think he's on pace to a 2K season. Let's call it what it is right now. We're halfway through the season. He's already over 1,000 yards for the season.
Yeah, I thought he was a Hall of Famer before he joined the Ravens, but he just stamped his ticket to Canton, I thought, with the season that he's having now. I got to be honest, I am stunned. I mean, you think about the league, there's supposed to be, Melissa, smart general managers out there winning Super Bowls. Nobody wanted Derrick Henry, really, except the Baltimore Ravens. And to me, I don't know who to blame here, if it's the 30 teams that didn't want him or the one that did, basically. So that's kind of the case here. And Lamar Jackson right now, Melissa, is favored to win the MVP of the NFL, tied with Josh Allen. They're both 3-1. Mahomes 4.5-1. Goff has to be in the conversation because he's been so good. Daniel's probably going to win the Rookie of the Year, maybe MVP. We'll see. Feels like a 4-player race at this point. There are some people that feel it's a 2-player race, Melissa, because Mahomes, outside of last week, really hasn't had a Mahomes-type season.
I would agree with that. And look, obviously, I'm going to champion for Lamar Jackson because he's a quarterback that I cover. They're calling it the MV3 year, right? That's what the guys around the locker room have been calling it for Lamar. I mean, I think he's running the ball obviously phenomenally well. We know that what he can do on the ground, but his arm, right? I think he's really proven this year that he can be a true dual threat quarterback. And I remember 3 seasons ago, but when we were going into training camp, he had mentioned how hard in particular that he had worked in terms of the pass game. And he was bringing wide receivers down to Florida with him, where he's from, where he trains in the offseason, to really build that chemistry with him, because that's how badly this guy wants it, right? This is how badly he wants to be able to be great and to be the best. And he comes off of games like last week, or, some of the phenomenal games that he's had. And you ask him, how do you think he played? And he always says, we've got a lot of things to work on. We can get better. And Derrick Henry is the same way. So I really think that these two together have really brought some major chemistry to this team, but also set the standard, right, of what they think that they're capable of and what they can accomplish. And you really see all the guys on the offense, especially those wide receivers, really buying into it this season.
Melissa, let's end with the trade deadline. The Ravens yesterday or the day before got Tre'Davious White, so certainly that was a nice addition to their defensive back crew, and they needed somebody there. Deontay Johnson, I'm curious your thoughts on him, because I thought the Ravens were good in that spot, having Zay Flowers and having Rashad Bateman and having Mark Andrews. Is it the Likely injury the reason why they got Deontay Johnson? Is this a depth move? It's not that he's a bad player at all. I'm not saying that. It's just I thought they were good with what they had.
I think especially with Likely, obviously the injury, I think that's a good point. But also on top of that, you think about down the stretch, right? Guys that they're going to need hopefully in the playoffs. And he's someone who has a lot of experience, obviously one of the few guys in the league who can say that they've played on the Steelers and the Ravens. And also he's a special teams guy too. That's kind of where he's going to, I think, earn some of his money on the Ravens. He talked to us a lot about that when he first got here, that he has definitely gotten some reps on special teams where they do unfortunately need some help as well. But I will tell you, in terms of the defense, this fan base was dying for someone on the edge, right, to rush the passer. That they wanted an edge guy, and so we heard a lot about that this week. But I mean, they're going to go with the guys that they have. They have some great guys there, some veteran guys too, and Kyle Van Noy. So we shall see how that journey goes for this defense as the season goes on.
Yeah, the defense has struggled. One of the worst in the NFL against the pass, much better against the run this season. Now, Melissa, of course, is covering the Ravens. So she's not going to come on this show and pick Pittsburgh or Cincinnati to win the division. But let's look at the odds anyway, okay? Just for posterity.
I will be an honest person here. Yes.
No, you're not. We know. It's okay. Pittsburgh plus the Ravens are heavy favorites to win the division. They're the best team in the division. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not. But, Melissa, I've seen Pittsburgh play Baltimore a zillion times. And I can tell you right now, the spread's going to be 3 wherever the game is played.
Yes.
And usually you take the points wherever the game is played too, because it goes right down to the wire and the Tucker's kicking a field goal and winning or not attempting a field goal and losing. To me, that's where the division's going to be decided when these two teams play each other again.
Oh my gosh. And I put a lot of stake in Mike Tomlin, right? For as long as he's coached in the league and never had a losing season, he's doing something right over there for sure. So I agree with you on that. It's going to come down to these two teams, as it has so many times in the past. So that week 11 matchup they play next week. So I am very much looking forward to that first matchup to just kind of for it to be like a litmus test of where these two teams stand right now. Because I have concerns obviously about the Baltimore defense, also have concerns about the Steelers offense. So I think it's going to be a really fun, interesting ground and pound matchup that we always see between these two teams.
All right. Well, Melissa, enjoy the game tonight.
Thank you.
I don't know, but I'm guessing with the game being played tonight, maybe you get a break this weekend. Maybe you do from the NFL.
Fingers
just
crossed.
Sit back and watch.
We shall see.
Okay. Okay. Thanks,
you.
Melissa, for coming on. Appreciate it. All right. Coming up next, Brady Kannon joins us. He's got a great show here on SportsGrid. The Super Contest recap is up next. Don't go away.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class of the Heisman with those two games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those two games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. You know, I mean, what is he, a 6th-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got to the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Football contest show coming your way here on SportsGrid Saturday night. It is appointment viewing, listening. Brady Kannon is with us once again to review and look forward. Brady, great to have you back here on NewsWire. And, certainly the contests and the mini contests here are really in the heart of the season. Not a lot of time left. It's time to really, take a push forward if you're trying to win this thing. At the very least, I think it's very interesting to see some of these lines in these games this week because we're learning more about these teams week after week. Yeah, at the halfway point, officially underway in the second half of the season when the game kicks off tonight in Baltimore. So I think it is decision time. And for the entries that we have specifically on the Las Vegas Football Contest show, we're doing poorly. We're coming off of a 1-4 week. And I think that's our second 1-4 week of the season, which is pretty tough to recover from when you have a couple of those. And it's very disappointing because we just went 4-1 last week, so we're struggling to put any sort of run together. I also play on two other teams. One team is, right around 500, maybe a little bit to the positive. And then another team's doing really well, knock on wood. So the team that's doing really well, we kind of just want to hold serve. And with the team that's around 500, and then the team, of course, for the show that's below 500, we have to probably start getting a little, off the norm, if you will.
Yeah.
We can't just pick the obvious picks, and we probably have to take some bad numbers too, Craig. You know how this works in contest play. These numbers are set on Wednesday and Thursday. So, you might be taking a number that by the time Saturday afternoon rolls around is a full point different or something like that. But that's kind of the direction you have to go when you're looking to make up ground on the field. Yeah,
and something that we've talked about a ton is the consensus pick each and every week have been dicey, to say the least. Blind betting the consensus picks has basically been a winner for those people who have done it. Although last week, I believe the Rams were the most selected team, and they did win, but it took overtime for that. So, something to keep an eye on for those of you who were just not paying attention during the week. Just look at the consensus and usually fade it. Buffalo, one of those teams last week too. Yeah, Buffalo.
The Circa consensus went 2-3 once again. So you're hitting 60% if all you're doing is fading the Circa consensus. Now the Superbook, the Westgate went 4-1, but they're still well under 500. Yeah, you're doing pretty well if all you're doing is fading the top 5 picks.
Yeah. So let's take a look at week 10. I rarely talk about who I like on the show, Brady. I like to get opinions from everyone else, and every once in a while I'll share an opinion, and I'm going to do that here. So I want to ask you about this. The coaching fired bump to me is on the table this week with the New Orleans Saints firing their coach. Brady, in college football, I saw Rice fired their coach. I believe they won out right after that as a huge dog. What is it about these players that the minute their coach is fired for 1 week, it's like they rally around. They're like, it was his fault. It wasn't our fault. It's like, I'm not saying that this is a 70% hit rate. I'm not saying that. But it feels like it's well above 50%. And that's the spot the Saints are in this week. I kind of have to just blind take it.
I don't disagree with you at all, Craig, and it's really across all sports. I think we see that a lot in hockey. You have some mid-season firings on the ice, and that seems to create a bounce. You mentioned college football with Rice last week. I don't disagree with you at all. My numbers come to the Falcons as about a 2.5, 3-point favorite when I crunch all the stats. And just away from the coach bounce there, even the numbers are saying that the Saints would be a play here. But I can't ignore what you're talking about because it's a division matchup. We know the Saints are absolutely reeling. And there really is something that you allude to there, I believe. And we see it with quarterback change, too. Look at when Andy Dalton came in and replaced Bryce Young early in the season, and they beat the Raiders. There is something to the fact that the rest of the players on the team want to say, hey, it wasn't me. It's the guy that we got rid of. He was the problem. I'm going to go show you this week that it wasn't our fault. And you have a similar, mindset there in New Orleans this week. The players are saying, we're going to show you it was that darn coach that was holding us back. We're going to show the world that it wasn't us. And whether that's true or not, there's a mentality there that I believe is a real angle that you can lean on.
Yeah, I mean, folks, if you're listening to Brady talk, I mean, this is a real thing that happens. I know it sounds crazy, but it is true in the NFL.
It's human nature,
Brady,
right? And I think I've learned in the last couple of seasons, I believe human nature figures into these handicaps
definitely
more so than I ever knew. I mean, I was so. I mean, there's gut feeling and what have you, but numbers and analytics based. But there are like when a guy goes to play his former team,
revenge game.
Aaron Jones, playing against the Packers. The rest of the team knows what's going on. Hey, let's get behind our boy and make sure he has a good night. That stuff goes on. Yeah, no, Jameis Winston 2 weeks ago, Super Bowl winning quarterback. Last week looked like it doesn't belong in the NFL. I mean, it's so true. All right, so the Circa Survivor, all the Saints
took a
picks
hit
went
with
to
the
bleed.
Saints.
Yeah, so that's it. So how many people are left?
151, basically 150 entries left in Circa Survivor. And I was talking with a friend last night, and I said, boy, these contest picks, maybe we're doing something wrong with our process. He goes, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. There's only 150 people left in Circa Survivor. It's tough. So I said, yeah, maybe you're right. But yeah, we're getting close to six figures as far as your inherent value now on that ticket that you purchased for $1,000 earlier this summer. And, I always said if I got to the point where my ticket had an inherent value of 100,000 or better, that's when I would start to look to monetize. So maybe you see that this week with, guys, they're taking, the Chiefs, but they're going to the window and betting the Broncos and, hedging. And there's an awful lot of strategy that comes into play when that ticket, gets to that six-figure value area.
Yeah. Okay, tonight's game, any lean here? Ravens, Bengals, Ravens 6.5, total 52.5. Close game, or Bengals season comes to an end tonight?
I lean the Bengals here, Craig. I think they're going to show up. I think the situation heavily favors them. I worry about the injuries that they have, but I think the situation sets up really nicely for Cincinnati. The Baltimore Ravens, you were talking with Melissa in the last segment, they have the Pittsburgh Steelers on deck. That's the big one.
All right, Brady, thanks for coming on.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class of the Heisman with those two games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those two games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. What is he, a sixth-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got to the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from three.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. As we wrap up the show, I'm going to give you a little story in time with me as a reporter, kind of around Joel Embiid. Want to talk about that. Also, a legend retires, and maybe more March Madness for all of us. It's time now for Last Licks. Okay, so how do we judge this? So Joel Embiid, now we weren't there. We have no video to support this one way or the other. but it was reported yesterday that Joel Embiid is suspended 3 games for shoving a reporter. Now, I did read the story that the reporter wrote about Joel Embiid. I've been there before as media. Was it out of bounds to mention people in his family? I think, Joel Embiid should feel that way. I understand that. Did he go over the line by pushing the reporter? And did the NBA do the right thing by suspending him for 3 games? I mean, I'll leave that for you to decide. But I will tell you this. Back when I covered the Miami Heat on more of a regular basis, I was in the locker room after a game ended between the Heat and I think it was probably the Knicks. If I think back about it now, it must have been the Knicks. And the Heat lost. And everybody was crowding around center Alonzo Mourning. And somebody stepped on Mourning's foot, to which Mourning got super upset, looked directly at me, and said, "You stepped on my bleeping foot." Now, I did not. And afterwards, me and Mourning, hugged it out and all that. So nothing really came of it. But I definitely can understand the athlete's frustration. In this particular case, I'm going to say that Joel Embiid was right to be upset. I think that there's a lot of ways to handle this. I think he was probably wrong for pushing the reporter. And I think that the NBA really has to take a look at something like this, because if you're only going to suspend guys for 3 games for pushing and shoving reporters, now I wasn't there and I didn't see it, and I'm hoping there's a better account of it, but that just set the bar. Player pushes reporter, expect to get a 3-game suspension in the NBA. Interesting note there. All right, interesting note from Charlie Baker, the head of the NCAA. It looks like we're getting more March Madness, folks. This is not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. Baker on a podcast essentially said that they want to expand the NCAA tournament, but guess what's in the way? And why Baker said he did not want to expand the tournament beyond where it is, it's not the teams. It's the fact that they're going to have to do this on the weekend of the Masters if they expand the tournament to 1 more week. And that's not something that Baker wants to do, is interfere with Masters time. I didn't even think about that. Can you imagine having the Final Four on a Saturday of the Masters, Sunday Masters Championship, and then Monday NCAA Championship? Seems like a lot. So anyway, the other part of this too is that CBS for so many years has had the Masters. So how would they even navigate this? Would this be on an app of some kind? Masters on Saturday on CBS? And then the NCAA today may have seen the participant at the Olympics. Retirement is in order. No more. Making it official. You will not see Ray Gunn participate anymore in live break dancing and competitive break dancing. Now, she did say that she still will do it around the house, but you will not see her participate anymore. And she was such a big sensation. A lot of viral videos with her at the Olympics this past year. But as they always say, all good things to come to an end. And congratulations on a great breakdancing career. All right, congratulations to us. That'll do it for the show today. Thought it was a fun show. Thanks again to Matt Lutovsky for coming on the program. Also, thanks to Melissa Kim and, of course, Brady Kannon for breaking down all the contest action. Now, coming up next here on SportsGrid, 12 o'clock Eastern, we've got the early line. And that is followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast coming up at 3 o'clock Eastern. So make sure you stay on the grid for that. In addition, we've got a preview of all of the games coming up tonight with Pharrell. And also, don't forget, we have Pro Football Today previewing the games tonight as well. And the big game tonight, no doubt about it. It is the Bengals and Baltimore Ravens. Thanks again to our director, Luke, and for our producer, Frank. I'm Craig Mish. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. We got a Football Friday ahead for you. Bill Bender will preview all of the college football games. That is exclusively here on SportsGrid tomorrow. So I'll see you then for our next edition of NewsWire. Have a great day.